So today let us start the chapter respiration. What is respiration? We know the intake and outtake of the oxygen, the process of regulation is called respiration. So let us see what is the definition in the living cell. The oxidative breakdown of organic substances with the release of energy and conversion of potential energy into kinetic energy is known as respiration. In the biological definition, we can say that it is the process of releasing energy and converting that energy into kinetic energy so that we can perform our work, right? So in the living cell, what happened? The oxidative breakdown. This is the process of oxidation. Okay, so oxidative breakdown of organic substances with the release of energy and conversion of the potential energy into kinetic energy is known as respiration. What is the mechanism or process? See, all living organisms get energy from food intake, right? So food only give us the energy. The energy stored in the food gets released during respiration. How? During breathing, we inhale oxygen, which get transported in different parts and in the cell. In the presence of oxygen, the complete oxidation of food takes place and produces more energy. This process of breakdown of food in the cell with the release of energy is called cellular respiration. And the cellular respiration takes place in the cell of the organism. So we know that in each cell the process of respiration takes place. So see, the mechanism and the process is very easily written for the students so that they can understand and they can prepare their own answers. So there is nothing to mark up. See, the thing is that it is very easy that oxygen takes the role of transforming or in for conversion of food into energy within us, right? So see, again I'm telling that I'm repeating the thing that the energy stored in the food gets released during respiration. How this thing happens? See, during breathing, we inhale oxygen, which get transported in different parts of the cell, and with the presence of oxygen, the complete oxidation of food take place and produces energy. Okay, so this process of breakdown of food in the cell and releasing of energy is known as cellular respiration. Now in the cell, the food, that is the glucose, is broken down into carbon dioxide. See, the breakdown of food releases energy. How? The food that we take is glucose, right? If we take that food, the glucose in our body, with the help of oxygen, what happens? This glucose gets reduced to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And energy is released, right? This is the process of conversion or the oxidation. From glucose, it releases energy and carbon dioxide and water along with that is produced. So food, that is glucose, is broken down into carbon dioxide and water using oxygen. When breakdown of glucose occurs with the use of oxygen, it is called aerobic respiration. As oxygen is required It is known as aerobic respiration. On the other hand, if the food can be broken down without the presence of oxygen, then it will be known as anaerobic respiration. Okay. Now, but in some organisms like yeast can survive without oxygen, that is in the absence of air. In those kind of organisms where oxygen is not required, there what happens? Anaerobic respiration takes place. So they are known as anaerobics. Okay, like yeast and some other who live without oxygen are called anaerobes. They get energy through anaerobic respiration. In the absence of oxygen, glucose breaks down into from glucose without the use of oxygen. How it breaks? It breaks to alcohol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Energy is released within the body. Okay. So see, this is with presence of oxygen and this is with absence of oxygen. Okay. Now similarly, our muscle cells can also respire anaerobically, but only for a short time. When there is temporary deficiency of oxygen in the muscle cells, what happens? When in our body there is a temporary deficiency of oxygen, that time the muscle cells provide oxygen to the body. How? This glucose in absence of oxygen, again it is in absence of oxygen only, is stored in the muscle cells, and they in the time of deficiency releases or provide energy to the body. How? That is also in absence of oxygen only. Lactic acid plus energy. This glucose is converted to lactic acid. Okay, and this and energy is released in the body. Like this, in the temporary deficiency when occurs in our body, glucose, muscle cells respire anaerobically and provide the energy to the body. Next, what is that is an anabolic process and catabolic process. Two types of processes are there. This respiration is a catabolic process, whereas on the other hand, if you see photosynthesis and respiration together, if you see the photosynthesis is the example of an anabolic process, because there what happened? Anabolic means the building up process and catabolic means the breaking down process. Okay. Now respiration is called catabolic process. Why? Because respiration is a destructive process. Just now I said that anabolic is a constructive and catabolic is a destructive one. Where respiration substrate such as carbohydrate, protein, fat, organic acids are broken down into simpler products with the help of metabolic process in the body. Okay. Another thing is that the respiration results in decrease in dry weight of an organism. Respiration means the loss, right? It is the destructive process. So it results in the dry weight of an decrease in the dry weight of an organism. Okay, and here all these substrates are broken down into simpler products from the complex products with the help of a metabolic process. Next, potential energy stored in the food is released as kinetic energy. So as it is converted, as the potential energy from the food is converted to the kinetic energy into our cells, so this energy released in the body helps us to perform our daily work. Running, walking, any kind of work, we need energy. So we need the kinetic energy. Right. Next, simpler substances are formed from complex substances. Here it is already said. So this is why respiration, the process respiration is known as catabolic process. This can come as a short question also. Why it is known as a catabolic process? So this is the reason why it is called so. Next, respiratory substrate. Those protoplasmic substances which, when organ oxidized, liberate energy are called respiratory substrate. Just now you have seen which are the respiratory substrate: carbohydrate, protein, this and this. They are the protoplasmic substances and they are oxidized, and this oxidation releases or liberates energy. So those are the respiratory substrate. Although carbohydrate, protein, fats and organic acids are used as respiratory substrate, carbohydrates, particularly glucose, is the chief energy yielding substrate. Right? Short question. Which is the chief energy yielding substrate? Carbohydrate. Mainly glucose. Okay? Act as the chief energy yielding substrate, and before the starting of respiration, all forms of carbohydrates in the organisms are transformed into glucose. Hence, glucose is called the starting point of respiration. What is respiratory substrate? Is a short question, or it can be said why glucose is called the starting point of respiration. Here is the answer. Now let us go to the next thing. Site of respiration. Cytoplasm and mitochondria of all living cells are the main two sites of respiration. Cytoplasm and mitochondria. Right? Name the site of respiration. A short question. Anyway, types: aerobic, anaerobic, many types are there. Number one is aerobic, that is in presence of oxygen, you can see. So, it is the process by which complete oxidation of respiratory substrate glucose takes place in the presence of free oxygen, producing the end products like carbon dioxide and water with generation of energy. This I have already explained it, aerobic and anaerobic in details, so you can construct your own answers in your own language. Okay, this is a very easy language rather, and you can understand. So, what is aerobic respiration? This is the definition. And site of aerobic respiration, it occurs in the living cells of the aerobes, that is organisms which require oxygen and respire with the help of oxygen. Mechanism of aerobic respiration. In the living cells, the aerobic respiration is completed in three stages. What are the three stages? Glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and terminal oxidation. Through these three cycles or three steps, the complete oxidation takes place. Okay. Next is uh, this glycolysis, Krebs cycle, terminal oxidation we will study in detail in other chapters. So now coming to the next type of respiration is anaerobic respiration. It is process by which complete oxidation of respiratory substrate, that is glucose, takes place in the absence of external oxygen and forms carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol in plants. Okay, now this is takes place with in absence of oxygen. Okay, absence of external oxygen, and forms carbon dioxide and lactic acid. That time we have seen lactic acid, that is in case of animals. Along with carbon dioxide, lactic acid is produced in case of animals, but in case of plant, ethyl alcohol is produced in case of plant, along with the release of a part of energy. And site of anaerobic respiration, it takes place in in anaerobic bacteria like lactobacillus. unicellular fungus like yeast in skeletal muscle fibers during exercises. This you have already seen in skeletal muscle fibers. This act as energy giver in case of sudden deficiency of energy in the body. Next is mechanism. It occurs in anaerobes, the organisms which can live without oxygen. Thus, in the cytoplasm of anaerobes, one molecule of glucose is transformed into two molecules of pyruvic acid. See? Thus, in cytoplasm, what happens? One molecule of glucose is transformed into two molecules of pyruvic acid. Clear? This is the mechanism. Now, the mechanism is the cycles or the processes having many stages which we'll study in detail later. Now, what is the difference of aerobic and anaerobic respiration? It takes place in presence of oxygen. That's aerobes. And it takes place in absence of oxygen in anaerobes. Glucose gets completely oxidized. Glucose is incompletely oxidized. Here, carbon along with carbon dioxide and water are the end products. Here carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol in plants and lactic acid in animals are the end products. 1 gram mole glucose liberates 686 kilocalorie of energy in case of aerobic respiration, and then 1 gram mole liberates 50 kilocalorie of energy, much lesser, right? Okay. Aerobic respiration takes place in cytoplasm and mitochondria both. These two are the main sites of respiration, and in case of anaerobic, it takes place in cytoplasm of all cells. That is only cytoplasm. Okay. Now it includes glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and terminal respiration in the mechanism of aerobic respiration. In case of anaerobic, it includes only glycolysis. So here it is said that what happened? One molecule of glucose is transformed to two molecules of pyruvic acid. This transformation takes place in the process of glycolysis. This process we'll study later. Now breathing. What is breathing? Breathing means taking in air rich oxygen. Taking inside our body the air rich in oxygen and giving out the air rich in carbon dioxide with the help of respiratory organ. Which is a respiratory organ? Lungs, right? So, this process of breathing in and out is actually the mechanism of respiration. So, okay, breathing means taking in air rich in oxygen and giving out the air rich in carbon dioxide with the help of respiratory organs. Taking in the rich in oxygen, the taking in the air rich in oxygen is called inhalation, and giving out the air rich in oxygen is the mechanism is called exhalation. It is a continuous process which goes on all the time and throughout the life of an organism. It is a continuous and ever continuous process. When this inhalation and exhalation process stops, that means the person is dead. So it is an ongoing process. So the number of times a person breathes in a minute is termed as breathing rate, and during breathing, inhalation and exhalation takes place alternately, or you can say simultaneously. Okay. uh, it takes place alternately. You breathe in and you breathe out. Okay. A breath means one inhalation plus one exhalation. Okay. Now mechanism. What is the mechanism of breathing which actually occurs during respiration? What is the mechanism? When we inhale air, it passes through our nostril to and the nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, the air reaches our lungs through a windpipe. Lungs are present in the chest cavity surrounded by ribs on the sides. A large muscular sheet called diaphragm forms the floor of the chest cavity. Breathing involves the movement of the diaphragm and the rib cage. During inhalation, ribs moves up and down and the diaphragm moves down. So this is what mechanism takes. Uh, the air from the windpipe and the nasal cavity and nostril, it reaches our lungs, and there this lung is actually present in the chest cavity and it is surrounded by the ribs, which is known as the rib cages, so that it protects our lungs from any injury. So it is surrounded and protected by ribs, and a large muscular sheet called diaphragm forms the floor of the chest cavity, which actually is a flap-like structure, and it's a movable structure through which the air passes through in and out. So it's just like a window, you can say, this diaphragm. Okay. Now breathing involves the movement of diaphragm and the rib cage. Okay. The when you inhale, your rib cages expand, and again when you exhale, the rib cage and the muscles contracts. So during exhalation, what happens? The rib move up and outward and diaphragm moves down. This movement increases the space in the chest cavity and air rushes into the lungs and it gets filled with air. And during exhalation, the rib moves down, that is, it contracts, and inward, while the diaphragm moves up. Just the alternative. See, in exhalation, the rib moves up and outward, and here ribs move down and inward, and diaphragm moves down in case of inhalation, and in case of exhalation, it moves up. Just alternative. So easy to remember. I have written in very much easy language so that you can remember and you can write in your exams. So there is nothing to memorize. See, it is very easy to remember, and it moves up. The diaphragm moves up to its former position, resulting into the reduction of the chest cavity, and the air is pushed out of the lungs, and it is pushed out of the lungs. This movement in our body can be felt easily, right? When you expand and see, you take breathe in and breathe out, you can feel the mechanism easily. And when you can feel, you can understand the mechanism, and you can very easily write in your own language during exams. Okay, so the percentage of oxygen and carbon dioxide in inhaled and exhaled air is, see, this is the lungs. In inhaled air, it is 21% of oxygen, and exhaled air 16% of oxygen. And see, carbon dioxide 0.04%, and in exhaled 4.4%. See, oxygen is more here and less here, and just the opposite in case of carbon dioxide. It is more in percentage of exhaled air. Now, significance of respiration. Release of energy is one significance, and maintenance O2 CO2, maintenance of O2 and CO2 balance. The release of energy, it is an energy producing process. During respiration, potential energy is converted to kinetic energy. This released energy performs certain functions, like some amount of energy released during the respiration is consumed and stored as ATP. Is stored as ATP, a high energy rich organic compound in the mitochondria for future use. As we know that ATP is a energy storehouse, right? So the energy is stored there. Okay. Rest of the energy is released as heat energy to maintain the body temperature. Daily calorie required for adult is 2500 to 3000, that is 2500 to 3000 kilocalorie approximately, is obtained from ATP produced during respiration. And what is the maintenance of oxygen and carbon dioxide? During photosynthesis, plant body utilizes oxygen and utilizes carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. This causes increase in oxygen and decrease in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But it does not happen so, because during respiration, the living organisms takes oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. In this way, the process of respiration maintains oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in the environment. Now, what is the importance of respiration? It maintains oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in the environment. Cellular respiration is important because it provides the energy for living organisms to perform all the necessary functions. Respiration helps in various kinds of activities like reproduction, growth, and development. Then repair of worn out tissues and during muscle contractions to bring down various movements in our body, and it's also essential for synthesizing various molecules and maintaining body temperature. So these are all the importance of respiration. See, this can also come as a question. State some importance of respiration. So it is written in very easy language. I think you can understand what is actually the process of respiration along with the breathing mechanism. So this much for today. Thank you.